simple young woman invades a large company, carrying a truth that no one expects. Upon being humiliated, she reveals documents that challenge everything that has always been accepted there. The further she advances, the more she discovers a past erased by powerful interests. If this beautiful story of overcoming and love touched you, subscribe to the channel. Tell us here in the comments from which city you are watching. We really want to know. And if you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to leave your like and share with someone special. Monday morning began like all others on the 23rd floor of the Paulista Business Building on Brigadeiro Faria Lima Avenue, the financial heart of São Paulo. The air conditioning kept the temperature always pleasant, while executives crossed the glass-walled corridors with hurried steps, holding coffee cups and gleaming tablets. There, everything breathed success. Everything seemed to have its right place, its own rhythm, its unshakable order. But on that morning, something different was about to happen. Mariana Santos adjusted the strap of the canvas bag on her shoulder and took a deep breath before pushing the revolving door. Her white sneakers, already worn by time, contrasted with the impeccable marble floor. The synthetic leather folder she carried in her left hand was worn at the edges, with stains that betrayed years of use. She knew exactly how she must look to the eyes of those who worked there. A 28-year-old woman, brown hair tied in a simple ponytail, dark jeans, and a basic white blouse. Nothing about her screamed power or influence, and that was exactly why no one expected what she was about to do. The security guard at the reception watched her closely as she approached the granite counter. The receptionist, a blonde woman with impeccably manicured nails, looked up with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning. I came to speak with the administrative department of the Almeida Group. It's about a confidential matter involving the board of directors." The receptionist exchanged a quick glance with the colleague beside her. Mariana noticed. It was always like that. People measured her before even hearing her. "Do you have an appointment, ma'am?" "I don't, but I guarantee they will want to hear me." There was an uncomfortable pause. The receptionist typed something into the computer, then picked up the phone. Mariana waited standing, feeling the weight of the curious gazes of those passing by. She knew that moment was just the beginning. She knew the real battle was a few floors up. After a few minutes and several internal calls, Mariana was authorized to go up to the 25th floor, where the general administration sector was located. The elevator was mirrored, and as she ascended, she observed her own reflection. She saw the girl who grew up in a small apartment in the East Zone, who studied in a public school, who worked since she was 15 to help at home. She also saw the woman that girl had become, determined, tired of silences, ready to face whatever was necessary. The elevator doors opened with a soft sound. The corridor was wide, with abstract paintings on the walls and soft lighting coming from the ceiling. At the far end, a frosted glass door bore the inscription, "Executive Administration." Mariana walked there, pushed the door, and entered. There were 3 desks in the room. At one of them, a man of approximately 40 years old, in an impeccable navy blue suit and well-combed hair, looked up from his computer. His face transformed immediately. First came surprise, then an expression Mariana knew well, contempt disguised as curiosity. "Can I help you?" His voice had a condescending tone, like someone speaking to someone who is clearly in the wrong place. "I came to deal with a matter related to the origin of the Almeida Group. I need to speak with the person responsible for the legal department and with the board of directors." The man tilted his head to the side, as if he were trying to understand a poorly told joke. He stood up slowly, crossed his arms, and walked until he was standing in front of her. "Look, young lady, here we work with appointments. I don't know who let you up, but I think there has been a misunderstanding. If you are looking for a job, the human resources sector is on the 12th floor." Mariana did not look away. "I am not looking for a job. I am here because my name is directly linked to a will that involves the foundation of this company." Silence. The man blinked twice, then let out a short laugh. "Will? What will? Look, I don't know what kind of information you received, but I think it's better for you to leave before you create an uncomfortable situation." Mariana opened the folder calmly. She took out a copy of old documents, with faded stamps and pen signatures. She placed them on the desk beside her, very slowly, without haste. My name is Mariana Santos, daughter of Helena Cristina Santos, and my mother was a founding partner of the Almeida Group when it was still called Almeida and Associates. The laughter died. The man frowned and approached the desk. He picked up one of the papers, examined it quickly. His expression began to change. What was mockery turned into confusion. What was confidence turned into hesitation. This here proves nothing. Anyone can forge old documents. Mariana kept her voice firm but calm. Then I suggest you check the company's original records. Archive of the Second Notary Office of São Paulo, registered in 1997. Partnership between Augusto Henrique Almeida and Helena Cristina Santos. 50% for each. All documented, all legal, until the moment it ceased to be. The man, who until then had maintained an arrogant posture, now seemed visibly bothered. He looked at the other employees in the room who were watching the scene in silence. He picked up the internal phone and dialed an extension. Dr. Mauricio, there is a situation here that you need to see. No, it's not anything common. His voice was different now, less secure. While they waited, Mariana remained standing serene. Inside her, her heart beat hard, but none of that appeared on her face. She had rehearsed that moment so many times. She had prepared herself for the laughter, for the contempt, for the incredulity. She knew nothing would be easy, but she also knew she had something they didn't expect: the truth. A few minutes later, the door opened and an older man entered with grey hair, thin-framed glasses, and a well-cut grey suit. He carried an expression of someone accustomed to solving problems, but also a genuine curiosity. This was Dr. Mauricio Ferreira, legal director of the Almeida Group for over 15 years. He looked at Mariana, then at the documents on the table. Miss Santos? The tone was professional, but there was something in it that was not hostile. Yes, Mariana extended her hand. Dr. Mauricio shook it briefly. Bruno called me saying that you are making serious allegations about the foundation of the company. He gestured toward the man in the blue suit, who now seemed smaller, less imposing. They are not allegations, they are documented facts. Mariana pointed to the papers. My mother, Helena Santos, was responsible for the administrative and commercial structuring of the Almeida Group when it was still a small business consulting service provider. She organized the processes, opened doors, created the first partnerships that allowed for the initial growth. In recognition, she received 50% of the partnership. This is officially registered. Dr. Mauricio picked up the documents and began to analyze them carefully. His expression was difficult to decipher. He turned the pages slowly, read excerpts, examined stamps and signatures. After a few minutes, he looked up. I know the official history of the Almeida Group, founded by Mr. Augusto Henrique Almeida, who built everything from scratch and transformed the company into what it is today. I have never heard of a partner named Helena Santos. Mariana took a deep breath. Well, you should have heard of her, because she existed, and not only did she exist, she was essential. But at some point, someone decided it would be more convenient to erase that part of the story. Bruno, who until then had remained silent, spoke again. Doctor, with all due respect, I think this is an extortion attempt. She appears here out of nowhere with some old papers and wants what? Money? Mariana turned to him, and for the first time let some of the emotion she carried show through. I don't want money, Bruno. I want justice. I want them to recognize what was done to my mother. I want them to admit that she was pushed away from something she helped build. And I want them to pay for the erasure they committed. Dr. Mauricio raised his hand, asking for silence. Miss Santos, these are serious accusations. If what you say is true, we need more than these documents. We need to understand the full context. How did your mother leave the partnership? Was there a formal dissolution? Mariana opened the folder again and took out another set of papers. There was a dissolution, but it was not voluntary, and it was not transparent. My mother signed documents she didn't fully understand, trusting people she believed were partners. By the time she realized what had happened, it was too late. She was removed from the partnership through legal maneuvers that, if analyzed today, show clear irregularities. Dr. Mauricio was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Bruno. Leave us alone. I will talk to Miss Santos in private. Bruno hesitated, clearly bothered, but obeyed. He left the room, closing the door with more force than necessary. When they were alone, Dr. Mauricio sat down and indicated a chair for Mariana. She accepted. "Miss Santos, I have been in this company for a long time. I have seen a lot. And I will be honest with you, there were always stories that didn't completely fit, decisions that were made too fast, changes that were never well explained. But I never had proof. I never had a reason to question." Mariana leaned forward. "Now you do." Dr. Mauricio sighed. "I will need time to verify all of this. I will need to access old archives, talk to people, understand the chronology. This will not be resolved today." "I know." Mariana held his gaze. "I didn't come here expecting everything to be resolved in one morning. I came because I reached a point where I can no longer ignore what I discovered. My mother spent years carrying the weight of being erased. She never spoke about it openly, but I saw it. I saw it in the way she looked at the newspapers when the Almeida group was mentioned. I saw it in her silence when someone asked about the past. I grew up in the midst of that silence, and now I know why." "What does your mother want?" Mariana lowered her eyes for a moment. "My mother is no longer in a condition to fight. She has been through a lot. She is tired, but I am not." Dr. Mauricio nodded slowly. "I will investigate, but I need you to understand one thing. There are powerful people involved in this, people who will not like to see this story being reopened at all. I know, and I am prepared." He stood up, extended his hand. Mariana shook it. "I will get in touch. Leave your details with the secretary." When Mariana left that room, the corridor seemed different. The air was still climate-controlled, the walls were still impeccable, but something had changed. She had taken the first step. She had put the documents on the table. She had said out loud what no one wanted to hear. In the elevator, alone, she allowed herself to close her eyes for an instant. She thought of her mother. She thought of all the times Helena woke up early to work in jobs that didn't value her talent. She thought of all the nights she saw her looking out the window, lost in thoughts she never shared. "Today, Mother, I started telling our story, and I won't stop until everyone knows the truth." The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. Mariana crossed the lobby, passed through the revolving door, and stepped out onto Brigadeiro Faria Lima Avenue. The São Paulo sun beat down hard on that Monday morning. She took a deep breath, adjusted the bag on her shoulder, and began to walk. She knew the path would be long. She knew there would be resistance. But she also knew she was no longer alone in this fight. She carried with her the strength of a woman who was silenced, but who was never forgotten. And that, Mariana was sure, was more powerful than any well-cut suit or any laugh of contempt. 29 years ago, Liberdade neighborhood, São Paulo, Helena Cristina Santos was 26 years old when she met Augusto Henrique Almeida. It was a Thursday afternoon, and she was finishing her shift at the accounting office, where she worked as an administrative assistant. The place was small, cramped, with only 4 desks and an old printer that was constantly jamming. Helena earned little, but she was incredibly efficient. She organized the chaos that the accountants created, transformed piles of papers into functional systems, and had a natural talent for solving problems that no one else could see. That afternoon, a man entered the office carrying a voluminous folder and an expression of someone who was about to give up on everything. He was about 35 years old, dark hair slightly disheveled, a dress shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows. There was something about him that drew attention. It wasn't the clothes or the posture, it was the intensity. That man seemed to be carrying the weight of 1,000 decisions not made. He approached the counter and asked if anyone could help him organize the accounting of a small consulting business he was trying to structure. The receptionist said all the accountants were busy, but that he could leave the documents and come back the following week. Helena observed the scene from the back of the room. She saw the frustration on his face. She saw the way he pressed his lips together, as if he were holding back words he wanted to scream. Then, without thinking much, she stood up and walked to the counter. "I can take a look if you like." The man looked at her with surprise. The receptionist did too. "Are you an accountant?" "No, I'm an administrative assistant, but I've been working with document and process organization for 5 years. Maybe I can help." Augusto hesitated for a moment. Then he smiled for the first time, a tired but genuine smile. "I have nothing to lose. They sat at an empty desk in the corner of the office. Augusto opened the folder and began to explain. He had a small business consulting firm, worked alone, served a few clients, but was completely lost on the administrative side. He didn't know how to organize cash flow, couldn't control deadlines, had no system at all to manage contracts. Everything was mixed up. Invoices along with receipts, commercial proposals mixed with proof of payment. It was a complete chaos. Helena began to separate the documents into piles. Invoices here, contracts here, expense receipts here. While she organized, she asked questions. How much do you charge per project? How long does each consultancy take? What are your fixed costs? Augusto answered, impressed by the clarity of the questions. No one had ever asked that in that way. After 2 hours, Helena had created a basic system. Nothing sophisticated, but functional. She showed him how to separate income from expenses, how to control payment deadlines, how to organize documents by client. Augusto listened with absolute attention. Every now and then, he wrote something down in a small notebook he took from his pocket. When they finished, he looked at her with an expression Helena couldn't define at the time. Only years later would she understand. It was respect. True respect. How much do I owe you for this? Helena smiled. Nothing, I was here anyway, I just helped. Augusto shook his head. No, this here is worth money. You just did in 2 hours what I couldn't do in 6 months. He took some bills from his wallet and placed them on the table. Helena looked at the money, then at him. It wasn't much, but it was more than she earned in an entire day of work. Let me make you a proposal, Augusto said, leaning forward. You work here, right? How much do you earn? Helena told him the amount. He did a quick mental calculation. And what if I paid you double that to come work with me? Not every day, maybe 3 times a week. I need someone to organize things, someone who understands the practical side of the business. I know how to do consultancy. I know how to solve problems for other companies, but I can't solve mine. Helena was silent. It was a good offer, very good. But it also meant leaving the security of a steady job to work with someone she had just met. I'll think about it. Think about it indeed and give me an answer by Friday. He left a simple business card with the name Augusto Almeida and a phone number. Nothing more. Helena spent that whole night awake. She talked to her mother, a retired lady who lived with her in a 2-room apartment in Villa Mariana. Her mother said that life was made of calculated risks and that sometimes we needed to trust our own instinct. On Friday, Helena called Augusto and accepted the proposal. The first months were intense. Helena went to Augusto's small office 3 times a week in the afternoon. The place was tiny, in a commercial room on Rua da Consolação, furnished only with a desk, 2 chairs, and an old cabinet. But there, something began to happen. Helena didn't just organize documents. She noticed patterns. She noticed that some clients took longer to pay, so she created a polite but firm collection system. She noticed that Augusto charged very little for some services, so she suggested adjustments. She identified that he wasted time with poorly formatted proposals, so she created standardized templates that saved hours of work. Augusto, in turn, was brilliant on the technical side. He understood business processes like no one else. He knew how to diagnose problems, propose solutions, implement changes, but he needed someone to transform that talent into a sustainable business. And Helena did exactly that. After 6 months, the consultancy's revenue had doubled. Not because Augusto worked more, but because Helena had structured everything efficiently. Every minute was utilized, every client was well served, every proposal arrived on the right deadline. It was on a December afternoon, with the sun coming through the office window, that Augusto made the proposal that would change everything. Helena, I need to tell you something. She looked up from the papers she was organizing. His tone was serious. This business here isn't just mine anymore, it's ours. You aren't just an employee. You are the reason this is working. I want to formalize this. I want you to be my partner, 50% for each. Helena was speechless. Partner? She had never imagined something like that. She had accepted the job because it paid better, because she liked the challenge, because she believed in Augusto's potential. But a partnership? That was something else. That was commitment, responsibility, shared risk. To Augusto, I don't know. I don't have money to invest. I don't have capital. You have something better than money. You have talent, dedication, and vision. Without you, I would be stuck where I was a year ago. With you, we can go much further. I know how to do consultancy. You know how to do business. Together, we can build something solid. Helena looked around. That small office, that simple desk. But she also saw the contracts growing, the satisfied clients, the possibilities opening up. I need to think. Think. But don't take too long, because I need you not as an employee, as a partner. A week later, Helena gave her answer. Yes. They went to the notary together. They registered the partnership officially. Almeida and Associates, Augusto Henrique Almeida and Helena Cristina Santos, 50% each, all documented, all legal, all transparent. In the following months, the company began to grow for real. Helena took over the commercial and administrative side. She created a client acquisition system that worked. She networked, participated in business events, opened doors that Augusto alone could never open. She had a way with people. She knew how to listen, how to negotiate, how to transform contacts into opportunities. Augusto handled the technical part. He did the consultancies, solved the problems, delivered results, and he always delivered with exceptional quality. Clients came back. They referred others. The company's reputation began to grow in the São Paulo market. In 2 years, they had already rented a larger office in the Paulista region. They hired 3 employees. They expanded the service portfolio. Revenue grew month after month. They weren't rich, but they were building something solid, something that had a future. Helena worked from Monday to Saturday. She arrived early, left late, but she didn't complain. She felt she was building something that was hers too. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just executing orders from other people. She was making decisions. She was creating. She was achieving. Helena's mother, Dona Aparecida, always asked when she was going to rest. Helena replied that she would rest when everything was firm, when the company was large enough not to depend entirely on constant effort, when they could hire more people and divide responsibilities better. It was at that time that Rodrigo Almeida entered the story. Rodrigo was Augusto's brother-in-law, married to his younger sister, Beatrice. He was about 30 years old, had a degree in business administration, and worked at a multinational as a sales manager. When he heard about the consultancy's growth, he began to get closer. He appeared at the office, gave suggestions, made comments about management and strategy. At first, Helena thought he was just being helpful. Augusto did too. Rodrigo had experience in large companies, knew methods they didn't know. Some of his ideas were actually good. But there was something about Rodrigo that bothered Helena, something she couldn't define. Maybe it was the way he looked at the office, as if he were evaluating the value of each piece of furniture. Maybe it was the way he asked questions about revenue, about clients, about contracts. Questions that seemed innocent but carried more weight than they appeared to. On a Friday afternoon, Augusto called Helena for a conversation. Rodrigo wants to invest in the company. Helena felt something tighten in her chest. Invest? He has money saved. He wants to join as a minority partner. He said he can bring big contacts, help expand to other states. He thinks we have the potential to grow much faster. And you want to accept? Augusto hesitated. I think it could be good. Extra capital, experience in large companies, a network of contacts. But I want to know what you think. We are partners. Big decisions we make together. Helena was silent for a long moment. She thought about the way Rodrigo looked at things. She thought about the questions he asked. She thought about the tone of voice he used, always subtly condescending when he spoke to her. I don't know, Augusto. There's something about him that doesn't give me confidence. I can't explain it. It's just a feeling. Augusto smiled. You've always been more suspicious than me, but maybe it's good to have someone like that. Someone who questions. Someone who doesn't accept everything right away. So let's take it slow. If he is to join, let everything be very well defined, clear contracts, limited participation, and nothing changes in our main partnership. Agreed. But Helena knew at that moment that something was beginning to change. She couldn't see exactly what, she couldn't predict how, but she felt it. It was like a shadow forming in some place she still couldn't see. 3 months later, Rodrigo officially entered the partnership with a 15% stake. Augusto and Helena each kept 42.5%. Everything was registered. Everything was documented. At first, it really seemed like it had been a good decision. Rodrigo brought some new clients, made important connections. The company continued to grow, but he also began to suggest changes, small changes at first. An adjustment here, a reorganization there. Helena noticed, but she had no concrete arguments to oppose them. After all, the results continued to be good. But those small changes began to create something larger. Meetings started happening without Helena being notified. Decisions were made and communicated to her afterward. In the beginning, they were small things, but gradually they became bigger. Augusto, when Helena questioned him, said it was just to speed up processes, that she was too busy with the commercial side and didn't need to worry about all the operational details. He trusted Rodrigo, and he trusted that Helena would understand. But Helena didn't understand. She felt she was being pushed away from decisions that had always been made together. She felt her space was being reduced, millimeter by millimeter, in a way so subtle that it was hard to point out exactly when it had started. And worst of all, she didn't know how to fight against something she couldn't clearly define. How to say she was being excluded when technically she was still a partner. How to complain about decisions that, in isolation, made sense. How to prove there was a greater intention behind small, apparently harmless gestures. She started sleeping poorly. She woke up in the middle of the night thinking about the company, the changes, the future. Her mother noticed, asked if everything was okay. Helena said yes, that it was just fatigue. But it wasn't just fatigue. It was the beginning of something she didn't yet have the courage to name. It was the start of a process that, by the time she finally understood it, would already be too late to reverse. On those nights of insomnia, Helena looked at the ceiling of her room and wondered if she had made the right choice in accepting Rodrigo as a partner. She wondered if that initial feeling, that discomfort she couldn't explain, was actually a warning she should have listened to more closely. But it was too late to go back. What was done, and now all that remained was to move forward and hope her suspicions were just paranoia. But deep down, Helena knew they weren't. 2 years after Rodrigo's entry, the company was no longer the same. It had grown, yes, revenue had tripled. Now they occupied an entire floor in a commercial building on Paulista Avenue. They had 15 employees. They served large clients. Everything seemed to indicate absolute success, but Helena felt she was losing something essential, something she couldn't recover. Strategic meetings always happened on Monday mornings. Helena discovered this by chance when she arrived early one day and saw Augusto and Rodrigo leaving a conference room with papers in their hands. She asked what it was about. Rodrigo replied with a cordial smile that it was just an operational alignment, nothing important. Augusto looked away. That repeated week after week. Small meetings, small alignments, small decisions that, added up, were changing the direction of the entire company. Helena tried to talk to Augusto. She scheduled a lunch, just the two of them, as they used to do in the old days. They sat in an Italian restaurant on Rua Augusta, the same place where they used to celebrate achievements in the first years of the partnership. Augusto, I feel like I'm being left out of the important decisions. He moved the gnocchi with his fork without looking at her. It's not that, Helena. It's that you are so focused on the commercial part, on the clients, that we don't want to overburden you with operational details. But I always handled the operational part. It was always me who organized the processes, who structured the routines. Now it seems I don't need to do that anymore. It seems someone else is doing it. Rodrigo has experience in managing large companies. He brought methods we didn't know. He is helping to professionalize the operation. Helena placed her fork on the table. Does professionalizing mean pushing me away? Augusto finally looked at her. There was fatigue in his eyes. You are misinterpreting. No one is pushing you away. You are still a partner, still essential. We are just distributing responsibilities better. But Helena was not convinced. She knew how to recognize patterns. And the pattern she saw was clear. Rodrigo was gradually taking control of areas that were once hers. And Augusto, for some reason she couldn't completely understand, was allowing it. Months passed, the situation worsened. Helena discovered that important contracts had been signed without her approval. She discovered that structural changes had been implemented without her consultation. She discovered that her name no longer appeared in internal documents as it did before. She tried again to talk to Augusto. This time he was visibly irritated. "Helena, you need to trust more. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that Rodrigo is helping the company grow. You are becoming paranoid. You are seeing a conspiracy where there is only efficient management." Those words hurt more than any exclusion. Paranoid. That was how he saw her now. Not as the partner who had helped build everything from the beginning, but as someone who was hindering progress. It was on a Thursday afternoon that the final blow happened. Rodrigo scheduled a meeting. He said it was about the company's corporate reorganization, that they needed to make some adjustments to optimize the tax structure and facilitate future expansions. Augusto was present. There was also a lawyer Helena didn't know. The lawyer explained, with technical terms and a speed that made comprehension difficult, that it would be necessary to do a partial demerger of the company, create a new corporate structure, redistribute stakes. He spoke of holdings, of subsidiaries, of tax optimization. He used words Helena knew, but combined in ways that confused her. "There are documents that need to be signed today," Rodrigo said. "It's a legal deadline. If we don't do it now, we lose the tax opportunity window." Helena looked at the papers. There were many, pages and pages of legal terms. She asked for time to read carefully, to consult her own lawyer. Rodrigo sighed. "Helena, do you trust me? Do you trust Augusto? This here is routine. Companies do this all the time. If you insist on delaying, we will lose the opportunity and the company will pay much more tax. Do you want us to lose money because of bureaucracy?" She looked at Augusto. She expected him to say something, to defend her, to ask them to wait, but Augusto only nodded. "It's safe, Helena, you can sign." And she signed, because she trusted him, because she believed that despite everything, Augusto would never do anything to harm her, because she was tired of fighting against something she couldn't completely understand. She signed page after page. She put her initials where they indicated. She left her fingerprint where they asked. When she finished, Rodrigo collected the documents efficiently. He thanked her for her understanding. He said that was important for the company's future. Helena left that meeting with a tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. She got home, tried to read the documents she had taken copies of, but the words seemed scrambled. She tried to understand what she had signed, but the language was too complex. She thought about looking for a lawyer the next day, but fatigue won. She slept with the feeling that she had made a grave mistake, but without knowing exactly what. The following weeks were strange. Nothing changed visibly. Helena continued going to the office, continued taking care of some clients, continued signing routine documents, but there was something different in the air. People treated her in a slightly distinct way, more polite perhaps, more formal, as if she were an important visitor, not a partner. It was only 3 months later that Helena discovered what had happened. She went to the notary's office to check a record related to an old contract. She asked to consult the company's updated corporate documents. When she received the copies, she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her name was no longer as a main partner. She was listed only as a minority shareholder with a stake of 8%. The documents showed that she had agreed to a corporate reorganization that diluted her original stake, that she had received equivalent financial compensation, that she had voluntarily signed the transfer of her quotas. Everything was there, her signature, her fingerprint, her agreement. Helena sat in a chair at the notary's office and stayed there, motionless, trying to process what she was seeing. She tried to remember exactly what those documents said. She tried to reconstruct the meeting in her memory. But everything was confusing. The lawyer's words, the haste, the pressure, the trust she placed in Augusto. She had been manipulated. In a legal way, within the rules, but manipulated. She had signed her own exit without understanding what she was doing. She went home. She didn't go to the office. She locked herself in her room. Her mother, Donna Aparecida, knocked on the door, asked if everything was okay. Helena couldn't answer. She spent days trying to understand how to proceed. She consulted 2 different lawyers. Both said the same thing. Legally, everything was correct. She had signed. She had agreed. Proving she was induced would be almost impossible. It would cost a lot of money. It would take years. And there was no guarantee of success. Helena didn't have money for a prolonged legal battle. She didn't have the emotional structure to face years of litigation, and part of her still didn't want to believe that Augusto had allowed that consciously. She wanted to believe that he had also been deceived, that he didn't know what Rodrigo was doing. She tried to talk to Augusto one last time. She called his cell phone. She left messages. She sent emails. He didn't answer. She spent 2 weeks trying. Nothing. Finally, she managed to find him by chance in a cafe near the office. He was alone, reading a newspaper. When he saw her approach, his face hardened. "Augusto, we need to talk." He sighed. "There is nothing to talk about, Helena. You signed the documents. You received the financial compensation. The reorganization was necessary. The company is growing and needed a more professional structure. Did you know? Did you know I was signing my exit?" Augusto looked at the coffee in his cup. "It wasn't your exit. It was a reorganization. You continue as a shareholder. You continue receiving proportional dividends." 8%, Augusto. From 50 I went to 8%, and you think that is not an exit? It was what made sense from a business point of view. The company grew. Rodrigo brought capital. He brought expertise. The old structure no longer supported the growth we are having. Helena felt tears wanting to come, but she held them back. "I helped build this. I was there when it was nothing, when it was just you, a desk, and a pile of disorganized papers. I transformed that into a business. And now you tell me that 8% is what makes sense." Augusto looked up, and for the first time Helena saw something she had never seen before in him. Coldness. Things change, Helena. Businesses evolve. Not always are the people who are there at the beginning the right ones for the growth. That's how it works. Those words were like a punch. Helena stood there, motionless, trying to process what she had just heard. The man she had helped, whom she had trusted, with whom she had shared dreams and achievements, was saying she was no longer necessary, that she had been replaced, that her role had come to an end. She said nothing more. She turned and left the cafe. As she walked along the sidewalk of Paulista, with hurried people passing on both sides, she felt she had lost something much larger than a company. She had lost faith in people's word. She had lost the capacity to trust. In the following months, Helena tried to move forward. She looked for a job. She sent resumes, she did interviews, but she always ran into the same question. Why had she left the partnership of such a successful company? And she had no answer that made sense. She couldn't say she had been manipulated, because technically she had signed everything voluntarily. She couldn't say she had been pushed away, because she received proportional dividends as a minority shareholder. The truth was too complicated to be explained in a job interview. She ended up accepting common administrative jobs, nothing that came close to what she did before, nothing that used all her potential. But she needed to pay bills. She needed to keep living. The worst was not the financial loss. It was the erasure. The company changed its name. It ceased to be Almeida and Associates. It became the Almeida Group. The official history began to tell that Augusto Henrique Almeida had founded the business alone, with entrepreneurial vision and a talent for management. There was no mention of a female partner. There was no mention of Helena. It was as if she had never existed. When the Almeida Group began to appear in business magazines, in lists of growing companies, in reports about successful entrepreneurship, they always told the same version. The visionary founder, consistent growth, professional management implemented by the brother-in-law. Nothing about the woman who had organized the initial chaos. Nothing about who had opened the first doors. Nothing about who had transformed technical talent into a sustainable business. Helena read these reports in secret. She didn't comment to anyone, not even to her mother. She kept the pain to herself, as if talking about it would make it all more real, more painful. Over time, she stopped reading, stopped following. She tried to forget. But there was one person who didn't forget, who observed everything, who asked questions, who noticed when her mother looked out the window with that lost gaze, carrying the weight of things not said. Mariana was 10 years old when all this happened. She didn't understand the details, but she understood that something had changed in her mother. The lively woman, full of energy, who woke up early with plans and dreams, had given way to someone who just followed routines, who worked to survive, not to build, and Mariana, even without understanding completely, made a silent promise to herself. One day she would discover what had happened. One day she would understand why her mother had changed so much. One day she would do something about it. 18 years later, that promise was about to be fulfilled. Because Mariana had grown up, she had studied, she had investigated, and she had discovered that the story they told her was not the full story, that there were hidden documents, that there were erased truths, that there was a woman who deserved to have her name recognized. And she was not going to rest until that happened. Mariana was 23 years old when she decided she needed to truly understand what had happened to her mother. She was finishing her business administration degree at the University of São Paulo, worked part-time in a small accounting firm, and spent her nights studying. But there was something that wouldn't leave her head, that feeling that there was an untold story, a truth hidden somewhere. It began simply. She asked her mother about the past. Helena, as always, avoided the subject. She said they were old things, that it wasn't worth picking at wounds already scarred. But Mariana saw that the wounds were not scarred. They were only covered up. It was on a Saturday afternoon when Helena went out to do some shopping that Mariana found the first concrete clue. She was organizing her mother's closet, separating old clothes for donation, when she discovered a shoebox hidden at the back, behind old blankets. Inside it there were papers yellowed by time, folded documents, newspaper clippings. Mariana sat on the bedroom floor and began to examine everything carefully. There was a partnership agreement for the company Almeida and Associates, dated 1997, with Helena Cristina Santos's name as a partner with 50% participation. There were payment receipts, proof of deposits, old correspondence. There was also a newspaper clipping from 2005, an article about the growth of the Almeida Group with a photo of Augusto and Rodrigo. No mention of Helena. And there was a letter, a handwritten letter never sent in her mother's handwriting. It began like this. Augusto, you know that what they did to me was not fair. You know that I trusted you. I never imagined you would allow this. Mariana read the whole letter. It was 4 pages of pain, of incomprehension, of questions without answers. Her mother had never sent that letter. She had kept it, like someone keeping a scream that was never released. When Helena arrived home and saw her daughter with the documents in her hands, her face turned pale. She tried to collect everything, tried to say that it didn't matter anymore. But Mariana held her hand firmly. Mother, I need to know what happened. I need to understand. Helena sat on the bed. She was silent for a long time. Then she began to speak. She told everything. The beginning of the partnership with Augusto, the growth of the company, Rodrigo's entry, the gradual distancing, the documents she signed without understanding, the forced exit, the erasure. Mariana listened to everything without interrupting. When her mother finished, her eyes were full of tears, but her voice was firm. We are going to fix this. Helena shook her head. It's too late. Years have passed. I don't have money for lawsuits. I don't have the energy to fight against powerful people. But I do. Mariana held her mother's hands. I'm going to find out everything. I'm going to gather evidence. I'm going to make them recognize what you did for that company. Helena wanted to argue, wanted to say it was dangerous that she would wear herself out. But she looked into her daughter's eyes and saw determination. The same determination she herself had had 20-some years ago when she helped build something from scratch. In the following months, Mariana transformed into an investigator. She began researching everything she could find about the Almeida Group. She read old reports, looked for public records, accessed notary archives. She discovered that the company had grown exponentially in the last 20 years. Rodrigo Almeida was now the executive president. Augusto had remained as chairman until his death 3 years earlier. The news of Augusto's death surprised Mariana. Her mother had never mentioned it. When asked, Helena only said she had read it in the newspaper at the time, but that she hadn't gone to the wake. She wouldn't be welcome. She was no longer part of that story. But Augusto's death opened a new possibility. People who die leave wills, and wills sometimes reveal things that were hidden in life. Mariana began looking for information about Augusto's probate. It wasn't easy. The processes were confidential, but she knew people from college who worked in law firms, who had access to procedural search systems. She asked for help. She explained the minimum necessary, and she got information. Augusto's will existed, and there was something strange. There was mention of unresolved issues related to the company's original partnership. There was recognition that decisions were made without total clarity. But the will was incomplete in public records. Pages were missing, clauses were missing. Mariana needed to see the full document, but how? That was when she met Lucas, a friend of a college classmate who worked as an intern at the second notary office of São Paulo, the same notary office where the original partnership had been registered. Lucas was young, idealistic, and when Mariana told him her mother's story, he was moved. I can't give you direct access to the archives, but I can tell you what to look for and when to look for it. Mariana spent weeks going to the notary office as a researcher, consulting old documents under the pretext of an academic paper on the evolution of corporate partnerships. She photocopied everything that was relevant. She organized it chronologically. She created a complete timeline. And it was in that timeline that patterns began to appear. The dates didn't match. Helena's supposed voluntary exit had happened in March 2004. But there were documents signed by her as a partner until June of the same year. How could she have voluntarily left in March if she was still signing as a partner in June? There were also records of corporate changes made with suspicious speed. In less than 3 months, the company's structure had been completely reorganized. Helena had left. Rodrigo had significantly increased his stake. And everything had been registered as if it were a natural, consensual evolution. But Mariana knew how to recognize manipulation when she saw it. She had studied similar cases in college, businessmen who pushed away inconvenient partners through complex legal maneuvers, corporate reorganizations that seemed technical but were in practice disguised expropriations. She needed more. She needed something that proved Helena had been induced to sign those documents, that she had not fully understood what she was doing, that she had been a victim of manipulation. It was then that Mariana had an idea. If Augusto had left a will recognizing problems in the way the company was conducted, there must be people who knew more than they said, people who had seen things, who had kept silent for convenience. She began looking for former employees of the company. She found some through social networks, through referrals. Most didn't want to talk. They were afraid of retaliation, of lawsuits, of losing professional references. But there was one who agreed to talk. His name was Carlos. He had been the company's accountant between 2003 and 2006. He was retired now, living in the interior of São Paulo, in a small town near Campinas. Mariana traveled there on a Saturday morning. They sat on his house's veranda, drinking coffee his wife had prepared. Carlos was about 70 years old with completely white hair and trembling hands, but his memory was clear. "I remember your mother," he said. "She was a competent woman, very competent. She made the company work. Dr. Augusto was brilliant on the technical side, but it was Donna Helena who made things happen for real." "And what happened?" Carlos sighed. "Rodrigo. When he entered, everything began to change. At first, it seemed like it was going to be good. He brought experience, contacts. But later I saw he had another intention. He wanted to control everything. And to control, he needed to remove whoever was in the way." "My mother." "Your mother?" Carlos took a sip of coffee. "I saw documents being prepared. I saw closed meetings. I saw Dr. Augusto being pressured. Rodrigo had a way of doing things. He wasn't aggressive. He was subtle, convincing. He made it seem like everything was for the good of the company, that they were technical, necessary decisions. And my mother signed without understanding. She trusted." Carlos looked at Mariana with sadness. "That was the greatest weapon used against her, trust. Do you have any proof of this? Any document, anything that can help?" Carlos was silent for a moment. Then he stood up and went into the house. He returned a few minutes later with an old folder. Inside it, there were copies of old emails, internal correspondence, memorandums. "I kept this for years. I didn't quite know why. Maybe because I thought one day someone would want to know the truth." He handed the folder to Mariana. "Use it as you see fit. But be careful. They are powerful people. They won't like having the past reopened." Mariana leafed through the documents quickly. There were exchanges of emails between Rodrigo and external lawyers discussing strategies for corporate restructuring. There was specific mention of how to handle the situation with Helena in order to minimize legal risks. There was, in one of the messages, a phrase that chilled Mariana's blood. "We need to make this look voluntary." She needs to sign believing it is for the good of the company. It was exactly what she needed. Proof that there was a deliberate intention to manipulate Helena. That it was not a technical and transparent reorganization. It was a calculated maneuver. She thanked Carlos. She promised she would use those documents responsibly. She returned to São Paulo with the folder on her lap, feeling that she finally had something solid in her hands. But one piece was still missing, Augusto's full will. Where were the missing pages? What exactly had he recognized? That was when she received an unexpected message, an unknown number, a short text. "I know you are investigating your mother's story. We need to talk. Beatriz Almeida." Mariana almost dropped her cell phone. Beatriz Almeida, Augusto's daughter, his only daughter, the fruit of a previous marriage that had ended in divorce. Mariana knew this from the research she had done. Beatriz had distanced herself from the family after her father's death. There were vague mentions of disagreements over the probate. Mariana replied, "Where and when?" They met 2 days later in a discreet cafe in the Pinheiros neighborhood. Beatriz was about 45 years old, with short blonde hair and elegant but unostentatious clothes. There was fatigue in her face, and something else. Guilt. They sat at a secluded table. Beatriz ordered a tea, Mariana a coffee. They were silent for a few seconds. "My father sought me out before he died," Beatriz began. "He was ill. He knew he didn't have much time. And he said things he had never said before, about the company, about how it grew, about decisions he made and which he regretted." "And my mother?" He mentioned Helena several times. He said he had made a grave mistake, that he had let Rodrigo convince him that pushing Helena away was necessary for the company's growth, that he had believed it at the time, but that later he realized he had been manipulated, that Rodrigo never wanted the good of the company. He wanted power. "Why are you telling me this?" Beatriz looked at her own hands. "Because my father left a will, and in that will he recognized everything. He wrote that important decisions were made without total transparency, that fundamental people were pushed away in questionable circumstances, that the official history of the company erased essential contributions." Mariana felt her heart accelerate. "I know that will exist, but it's incomplete in public records, because Rodrigo made part of it disappear." Beatriz took an envelope from her purse. "But I have a copy of the original. My father gave it to me before he died. He asked me to keep it, to use it one day if it was necessary to correct injustices." "And are you willing to give me this?" Beatriz pushed the envelope across the table. "I'm not giving it. I'm fulfilling my father's last wish. He wanted the truth to be known, and you are the right person to make that happen." Mariana took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside it there were certified copies of a full will, and in one of the clauses she read, "I recognize that Helena Cristina Santos was essential for the foundation and initial growth of this company. I recognize that her exit was not entirely voluntary or transparent. I leave recorded my regret for having allowed this to happen." There was more. Augusto determined that part of his personal assets be destined to repair injustices committed during the management of the company. But that clause had been ignored. Beatriz explained that Rodrigo had contested the will, claiming that that excerpt had no legal validity, and since it was only the word of a sick man against the legal structure of the company, he had managed to annul that part. "But now you have this," Beatriz said. "You can use it. You can show that it's not just your mother's word against theirs. It's also the word of the founder of the company, of the man they use as a symbol of integrity and vision." Mariana put the envelope in her purse. "Thank you. Why are you doing this?" Beatriz smiled sadly. "Because I learned that keeping silence about injustices does not bring peace. It only brings weight, and I am tired of carrying this." When Mariana returned home that night, she hugged her mother for a long time. She said nothing. She just hugged. Helena didn't ask what had happened. She just returned the hug, feeling that something was changing. that her daughter was fighting a battle she herself didn't have the strength to fight. And that night, for the first time in many years, Helena slept without waking up in the middle of the night. She slept without the weight of silence, because she knew someone was telling her story, someone was making her voice heard, and that, in some inexplicable way, already brought a relief she hadn't felt in decades. 3 weeks after Mariana's first visit to the Almeida Group, Dr. Mauricio asked her to return. But this time, it wasn't to the 25th floor. She was summoned to a meeting room on the 27th, where the executive board was located. The invitation came by formal email with a scheduled time and a note. Bring all the documents you possess. Mariana entered that room with the same worn leather folder, but now much heavier. Inside it was everything: the original partnership agreement, the emails provided by Carlos, Augusto's full will, certified by Beatrice, notary records, the timeline she had built, every piece of the puzzle that had taken her 5 years to assemble. Dr. Mauricio was not alone. There were 3 other men in the room. One of them was Bruno, the manager who had laughed at her on her first visit. He avoided looking at her directly. The other 2 were directors Mariana didn't know. All had serious expressions. Miss Santos, Dr. Mauricio began, gesturing for her to sit down. I have spent the last few weeks investigating your allegations. I accessed old archives. I talked to people who were in the company at that time. I reviewed notary records. His expression was difficult to read, and I must admit that I found inconsistencies, many inconsistencies. Mariana opened the folder slowly. I found them too. She began to place documents on the table, one by one, explaining each piece, showing the dates that didn't match, the emails that revealed hidden intentions, Augusto's will recognizing irregularities. When she finished, there was a heavy silence in the room. Dr. Mauricio picked up the will and read it carefully. He passed it to the other directors. Bruno looked at the documents as if he were seeing something he didn't want to believe. How did you get this? One of the directors asked, pointing to the will. Mariana looked at him. Someone who believes that the truth needs to be known gave it to me. Someone who carried the weight of silence and decided it was time to speak. Dr. Mauricio took off his glasses and rubbed his face. If this is true, and everything indicates it is, we are facing an extremely delicate situation. This is not just a corporate dispute. This questions the very legitimate origin of the company as we know it today. Bruno, who until then had remained silent, finally spoke. His voice was different, lower, less confident. I didn't know. I worked in this company for 15 years and always believed in the story they told us. I never imagined there was something like this behind it. No one knew, another director said. Or rather, some knew and preferred not to know. It's easier to accept the convenient version than to question. The door to the room opened abruptly. Rodrigo Almeida entered. He was about 60 years old now, with perfectly combed grey hair, a designer suit, the posture of someone accustomed to commanding. His face was red with contained anger. What is happening here? Dr. Mauricio stood up. We are analyzing documents that Miss Santos brought, documents that raise serious questions about events of the past. Rodrigo looked at Mariana with pure contempt. So it's you, the little daughter who came to try to extort money based on lies and forged documents. Mariana didn't look away. They are not forgeries, and I am not here for money. I'm here for justice. Justice? Rodrigo laughed, but it was a laugh without humor. Your mother left the partnership voluntarily. She signed all the necessary documents. She received fair financial compensation. And now, 20 years later, you appear wanting to rewrite history? She did not leave voluntarily. She was induced to sign documents she did not fully understand. Mariana pushed the emails toward him. And you know that very well, because it was you who orchestrated everything. Rodrigo picked up the papers. He read them quickly. His expression grew harder. This proves nothing. These are internal conversations about business management, totally normal and legal. Dr. Mauricio intervened. Rodrigo, there is specific mention of making it look voluntary. That is not the language of transparent management. It is the language of manipulation. Rodrigo turned to him with fury. Are you on her side? Are you questioning my management after everything I built here? I am on the side of the truth. Mauricio kept his voice firm. And the truth is that Helena Santos was essential for the foundation of this company. And the truth is that her exit was not as clean as we were always told. Rodrigo slammed his hand on the table. I transformed this company into what it is today. When I entered, it was a small, limited consultancy. I brought vision. I brought capital. I brought connections. I made it grow exponentially. Yes, Mariana said calmly. You made it grow, after removing whoever was in the way, after erasing the contribution of those who helped build the base that allowed for that growth. You know nothing about it. You don't know what was necessary to do to save this company. Mr. Augusto was brilliant, but he didn't have a long-term business vision. Your mother was competent, but limited. They didn't have what was necessary to reach the next level. And you did. Mariana stood up. You had what? The capacity to manipulate? The skill to make trusting people sign their own exit? The coldness to erase someone from history as if they had never existed? Watch your words. Rodrigo's voice was a thinly veiled threat. Or what? Are you going to push me away too? Are you going to make it look like I was never here? Mariana took a step forward. You are used to dealing with people who are afraid of you, who depend on you, who need to stay in your good graces. But I don't need anything you can offer, and I am not afraid of you. Rodrigo looked at the other men in the room. Are you going to allow this? Are you going to allow this girl to come here with nothing and accuse one of the company's founders of crimes he never committed? They are not baseless accusations, Dr. Mauricio said. She brought proof, and more importantly, she brought Augusto's will, his own words recognizing that injustices were committed. Augusto was ill, he didn't know what he was writing. That has no legal validity. Yes, it does. Mariana showed the document. It was registered at the notary's office. It was certified. It was witnessed by 3 people. It is totally valid. Bruno, who had remained silent during the discussion, finally spoke. Rodrigo, I always respected you. I always followed your orientations without questioning. But this here, he pointed to the documents, this changes everything. I can no longer look at this company in the same way. Are you going to believe her? Someone you don't even know? I'm going to believe the evidence. And the evidence shows that the story we always told is not complete, that we omitted important parts, that there were people who contributed and were erased. Rodrigo looked around the room. He saw that he was losing ground, that the narrative he had built and maintained for decades was beginning to crumble. He turned again to Mariana. What do you want? Money? Compensation? Say what you want so you'll leave and stop causing problems. Mariana shook her head. I already said, I don't want money, I want recognition. I want you to admit publicly that Helena Santos was a founding partner of this company, that her contribution was essential, that she was pushed away in an irregular manner. I want you to correct the official history. I want her name to appear where it always should have appeared. That is ridiculous. Am I going to damage the company's image because of something that happened 20 years ago? It's not because of something that happened 20 years ago. It's because of an injustice that was never corrected, and that continues to happen every time they tell the company's story without mentioning my mother. And if I refuse, Mariana picked up the folder, then I'm going to make all of this public. I'm going to seek out journalists. I'm going to go to social media. I'm going to tell the full story, with documents, with proof, with Augusto's will. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that the Almeida Group was built upon the erasure of a woman who gave everything for this company. Rodrigo turned pale. You wouldn't dare. I dare. Because I have nothing left to lose, because my mother has already lost everything, because the truth deserves to be known, regardless of the cost. There was a long silence. Rodrigo looked at Dr. Mauricio, at Bruno, at the other directors. He saw that he no longer had the total control he had before, that that young woman had done in weeks what he had avoided for decades. She had brought the truth to light. I'm going to need time. I need to consult lawyers, analyze the legal implications of all this. You have 1 week, Mariana said. 7 days. After that I start making everything public. Rodrigo left the room, slamming the door. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Dr. Mauricio looked at Mariana. You know this is going to be difficult, don't you? He won't accept it easily. He will fight with all his strength. I know, but I am prepared. And your mother, how is she dealing with all this? Mariana smiled for the first time that afternoon. She is beginning to believe that maybe, finally, her story will be heard. In the following days, the tension in the Almeida Group was palpable. Employees commented in low voices about closed meetings, about lawyers coming and going, about Rodrigo being visibly nervous, about something big happening behind the scenes. Bruno sought out Mariana. He asked to talk in private. They met in a cafe far from the company. "I need to apologize to you," he said, looking at his coffee cup. "When you arrived, I judged you by your appearance. I laughed at you. I treated you as if you were nothing, and I was completely wrong." Mariana nodded. "You weren't the first, and you probably won't be the last. I worked 15 years in this company believing in a story, believing that I knew everything about how we got here. And now I realize I knew nothing, that it was convenient not to know." "What are you going to do?" Bruno sighed. "I don't know. Part of me wants to leave, but another part wants to stay to see this be corrected, to ensure that if changes are made, they are real changes, not just cosmetic. And Rodrigo. He is desperate. He is trying to find legal loopholes. He is looking for ways to discredit the documents, but he is losing, and he knows it." Mariana took a sip of coffee. "I don't want to destroy the company. I just want the truth to be recognized." "I know. And I think many people within the company also want that. We just needed someone to have the courage to start." When the week ended, Rodrigo had given no answer. Mariana waited one more day. Then, as she had promised, she began to make everything public. Not in a sensationalist way, not with a scandal, but in a clear, documented, true way. She created an online page. She published Helena's story. She included copies of the main documents. She explained the chronology. She showed the evidence. And she began to share. In 24 hours, the story had been seen by thousands of people. Journalists began to get in touch. News companies wanted interviews. Social media buzzed with debates about business ethics, about the erasure of women's contributions, about how success stories don't always tell the full version. The Almeida Group was forced to take a position. And Rodrigo, for the first time in decades, did not have total control over the narrative. The truth had found its way, and there was no longer any way to bury it. 5 days after Mariana had made the story public, the Almeida Group was forced to call a press conference. The pressure had become unsustainable. Reports in major media outlets, debates on social media, shareholders questioning the management, clients asking for clarifications, employees demanding transparency. Rodrigo tried to control the damage. He issued vague statements speaking of a careful analysis of historical documents, but no one was satisfied with half words. The public wanted the full truth, and Mariana had shown that the truth existed, documented, verifiable, undeniable. It was Dr. Mauricio who called Mariana on Thursday night. His voice was tired but firm. "Tomorrow, 10 in the morning, main auditorium of the building. We are going to make an official statement, and your mother needs to be present." Mariana felt her heart accelerate. "My mother? Helena needs to be there. This is not just about documents or processes, it's about a person, and that person deserves to be seen." That night, Mariana talked to her mother. Helena was visibly nervous. She hadn't stepped into that building for over 20 years. The idea of returning, of facing looks, of being exposed, terrified her. "Mother, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I can go alone." Helena looked at her daughter. She saw her strength, her determination, the courage she herself didn't have when she needed it. And she realized she couldn't let her daughter fight that battle alone, not when they had finally come so far. I'll go because it's my story, and if they are finally going to tell it, I need to be there." On Friday morning, mother and daughter entered the Paulista business building together. Helena wore a simple navy blue dress and low-heeled shoes. Mariana was by her side, holding her hand. They crossed the lobby under the curious gazes of employees who had read the reports. They went up to the 10th floor where the auditorium was located. The place was full. Journalists with cameras and recorders, company employees, some shareholders, lawyers. At the front, at a long table, were Dr. Mauricio, Bruno, and 3 other directors. Rodrigo was not visible. Mariana and Helena were led to seats in the front row. Helena held her daughter's hand tightly. Her eyes scanned the auditorium, trying to absorb that this was really happening. Dr. Mauricio stood up and went to the microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone. We are here today to deal with a matter that has resonated widely in recent days, a matter that concerns the very origin of this company and decisions made more than 20 years ago. Total silence in the auditorium. In recent months, we were approached by Miss Mariana Santos, who brought documents and evidence about the participation of her mother, Helena Cristina Santos, in the foundation of what we know today as the Almeida Group. Initially, as many of you might imagine, there was skepticism. The official history of the company was always clear. Founded by Augusto Henrique Almeida, expanded and professionalized under the management of Rodrigo Almeida. He paused. But the official history is not the full story. A murmur ran through the auditorium. After a meticulous analysis of old notary documents, partnership agreements, financial records, and mainly the will left by Augusto Henrique Almeida, we reached an undeniable conclusion. Helena Cristina Santos was indeed a founding partner of this company, with a participation of 50%. She was not just an employee or a collaborator. She was an essential part of the initial construction of this business group. Helena felt tears arise. She squeezed Mariana's hand even tighter. Mauricio continued. More than that, the evidence shows that her exit from the partnership did not occur in the transparent and voluntary way that was always presented. There were, yes, documents signed. There was, yes, financial compensation. But the context of that exit, the way it was conducted, and mainly the subsequent erasure of her contribution from the company's official history, constitute an injustice that needs to be recognized and corrected. A journalist raised their hand. Where is Rodrigo Almeida? Why is he not present? Dr. Mauricio hesitated only a second. Mr. Rodrigo Almeida has decided to temporarily step away from his executive functions while issues related to this theme are fully clarified and resolved. It was at that moment that the side door of the auditorium opened, and Rodrigo entered, not with the arrogant posture of always, but downcast, visibly defeated. He walked to the table and sat far from the microphone. Dr. Mauricio looked at him, then continued. The board has decided unanimously to take the following measures. First, Helena Cristina Santos's name will be restored in all the company's historical documents as a founding partner. Second, a section will be created on the official website and in institutional materials recognizing her essential contribution to the creation and initial development of the Almeida Group. Third, a financial reparation will be made proportional to what would be due if her original partnership stake had been maintained throughout the years. Helena covered her face with her hands. She began to cry. Not from sadness, but from something she hadn't felt in decades. Relief, recognition, validation. Mariana hugged her mother. She whispered in her ear, "You did it. Your story is being told." Dr. Mauricio gestured in their direction. "I would like to invite Helena Cristina Santos to come here to the front, so that everyone can know the woman who helped build the foundations upon which this company was raised." Helena hesitated. She looked at her daughter, who nodded encouragingly. She stood up slowly. Her legs were trembling. She walked to the stage under applause that began timidly and grew louder. Employees stood up. Journalists applauded. Even some of the directors joined in. When she reached the microphone, Helena looked at all those people. She tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She took a deep breath. She tried again. "I never imagined this day would come." Her voice was choked with emotion. "I spent 23 years carrying the weight of being erased from something I helped create. I spent all those years wondering if it had been my fault, if I had done something wrong, if I deserved to be forgotten." Tears ran down her face, but she continued. "My daughter Mariana," she pointed to the audience, "she did what I didn't have the courage to do. She fought. She sought the truth. She did not accept the silence. And I am here today, not because I am strong, but because she is." Mariana was also crying now. "I am not here for revenge. I am not here for money. I am here because my story deserved to be told, because other women who were erased, ignored, removed from narratives they helped build, deserve to know that they are not alone, that the truth can take time, but it can arrive." The applause exploded, long sincere, emotional. When Helena returned to her place beside Mariana, mother and daughter hugged for a long time. They didn't need to say anything. Everything that needed to be said had been said. Everything that needed to be recognized had been recognized. Bruno approached after the conference ended. He spoke with Helena directly. "Mrs. Helena, I am the person who laughed at your daughter when she came here for the first time, who treated her with contempt, who thought she had nothing of value to say." He lowered his eyes. "I was completely wrong, and I apologize, not only to her but to you as well, for having been part of a system that ignored you for so long." Helena looked at him, not with anger but with understanding. "You didn't know, many people didn't know, but now you do, and what we do with what we know is what defines who we are." Bruno nodded. "I will do better, I promise." In the following months, profound changes happened in the Almeida Group. Rodrigo formally resigned from the executive presidency. There was no public scandal. There was no criminal lawsuit. But there was recognition that his management had perpetuated an injustice, and that it was time for a new leadership. Dr. Mauricio took over temporarily. Bruno was promoted to a position of greater responsibility. Beatriz Almeida, Augusto's daughter, agreed to join the administrative board, bringing a more ethical and transparent perspective. Helena's story was included in all the company's official materials. Her name appeared beside Augusto's as a co-founder. Reports were published telling her trajectory. Universities invited her to give lectures on female entrepreneurship and resilience. She, who had been erased, was now seen. Mariana returned to working normally, but now with a sense of mission accomplished. She had given back to her mother something that had been taken from her, not just a partnership stake or money, but dignity, recognition, history. One afternoon, months after everything had been resolved, Helena and Mariana were walking along Paulista Avenue. They passed in front of the business building where everything had happened. Helena stopped. She looked up. At those floors where she had worked decades ago, where she had dreamed, where she had built. "Do you know what is strangest?" Helena said. "It's not the feeling of victory, it's the feeling of peace. For so many years I carried anger, sadness, questions, and now finally I can let all of that go, because the truth was recognized." Mariana hugged her mother. "You deserved this, you always deserved it." Helena smiled. "And you gave it to me, you gave me my voice back." They continued walking, mother and daughter, side by side, knowing they had faced something larger than themselves, knowing they had proved that truths can be buried, but they never die completely, that justice can take time, but it can arrive, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. And as they walked through those streets of São Paulo, under the late afternoon sky, they carried something precious with them. The certainty that they did the right thing, that some battles are worth being fought, and that sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is simply to listen to their story and believe in it. Because in the end we are not just what we build, we are also the stories we tell. And Helena finally had hers back. Dear listeners, we hope that Helena and Mariana's story has deeply touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of courage, truth and justice, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment marked you the most. Was it Mariana's determination? Helena's resilience? The final recognition? Every day, we bring intense and engaging stories like this one, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul. Speaking of true struggles,